Hello again and welcome to Pick Yourself, the podcast that helps you build a meaningful electronic music career. If your goal is to create and release outstanding music on respected labels, get better bookings and grow a tribe of true fans instead of just social followers, then this show is for you. My name is Philip, thanks for tuning in, and now let's get right into today's episode. Welcome back to Pick Yourself. This is episode 32, and this week we're going to talk about art versus capitalism and how to escape the dilemma that arises from that. So, prepare yourself for an amazing discussion on this topic. But before we dive in, let me quickly introduce you to our little Facebook community that we have. You can go to pickyourselfpodcast.com/community and find some like-minded artists, some like-minded electronic music producers. There's great exchange going on and people help each other, support each other. And I'm also there. I'm also here to help you. I try to answer all your questions. So head over to pickyourselfpodcast.com/community and find us there. And for those of you who are new to the show, this podcast is absolutely about taking action and not only talking about things. And there is actually a PDF resource that goes with this podcast. It's called The 7 Strategies of Highly Successful Electronic Music Artists. And you can get that by going to pickyourselfpodcast.com/free. And in this PDF, I've just compiled the strategies that have worked for my most successful studio clients, what differentiates them from the other people that I work with. And if you want to take away something from that, just go there, pickyourselfpodcast.com/free. There's a lot of amazing stuff in there. It's a short read, but still will provide great value. Okay, let's jump into today's episode now. That is art versus capitalism and how to escape the dilemma. Now, you might ask yourself, why is that even important to discuss? Your goal is to build an artist career, and of course, if you want to build a career, there is some sort of monetary aspect to it automatically involved. And yes, that's true, but you try to build a career in the field of art, in the field of music. And therefore, it's not that easy to find a way that is on the one hand profitable and on the other hand stays true to whatever you want to build artistically. So there arises a dilemma that every artist has to face sooner or later. Can you survive by making great art while ignoring what actually sells? Do you have to compromise on the artistic side of things in order to have some level of success? And these are things that we want to find out in this episode. So first and foremost, music and other forms of art don't exist to create revenue in the first place. Their purpose, historically speaking, has been a completely different one. So music, paintings, poems, and so on have always been about telling stories or evoking emotions. That was their purpose to begin with. And therefore it's a bit strange to think of your creative output as a product, since it has a special meaning to you, hopefully, and also to your audience. And something feels inherently wrong when artists start to think about the commercial aspect of their work. And if your goal is to dedicate your life to creating amazing music, you're facing the problem of two very limited resources: time and money. On the one hand, you want to spend as much time as possible creating something awesome, meaningful art. And on the other hand, you need to earn money to make a living while doing so. So the discussion of art versus capitalism raises some very philosophical questions. Is it even possible to create art if you must treat it as a product later on? Is your music not a true work of art anymore if you tweak certain aspects for a better market fit, so to speak? How far can you go with the tweaking? Where do you draw the line? Are you a better artist if your music sells well? Or the opposite, are you not a true artist if your music sells well? You see, these questions are very hard to answer, and there's no black and white and no right or wrong. So let's see how we can make the best out of this art versus capitalism dilemma. So the first big point I want to make here is, when you join this discussion, please don't listen to the snobby elite. And who is the snobby elite now? Well, obviously, I hate elitism in every shape and every form. This is truly horrible in every type of discussion. I hear so many artists complain about Instagram DJs and the power of marketing these days, But when you then listen to their own tracks, things that they've produced, these snobby elite artists, you find out that they're following the exact same recipe. So, of course, their tracks are tweaked to work as smoothly as possible in other people's DJ sets. And while I get it, it makes a lot of sense, but it's also very conformist and it doesn't allow you to make super artsy, snobby comments about other people's music. They use the same boring, straight four to the floor kick that everybody else is using, probably even taken from a standard sample pack, or the same good old 909 sample that everybody uses. You know exactly when a new shaker or hi-hat is going to be introduced because they follow the most basic formulas of dance music. They use the same stereotypical bleepy rave sounds or 303 lines that have been written many times before, even in the 90s. So my question is, why should their music be more artistic and true than the tracks of so-called Instagram DJs? So in other words, is having some level of mainstream success and doing a good job at promoting your music the disqualifying factor, or is it the music itself? And then let's dig a bit deeper. What about left field artists like Holly Herndon or Robert Henke, who make super interesting non-conformist music but still have commercial success to some degree? So as I've said, there's no black and white answer, but one thing is for sure, the snobby elite of today's so-called underground scene does not provide a good answer. That means we have to find a better way to escape this dilemma. And I think you can only free yourself from the art versus capitalism discussion if you find your own answer to the question of what feels true to you as an artist, on the one hand, and on the other hand, what is relevant to your audience that hopefully reaches a significant size at some point. And I'm going to give you 3 aspects of great art that has the potential to generate income now. So, first of all, put your true heart and soul into your music. And yes, this sounds like a cheesy cliche, but I believe this is the most important factor of great art. As a music producer, you should not worry about your audience in the first place, because your true fans want to join your tribe of a true artist, a visionary in a certain field. And how can you be a visionary if you try to adapt to people's expectations all the time? So it's about what you feel, it's about what is truly, in essence, your soul that you put into your music. And this is hopefully enhancing the emotional quality, and your fans will notice this. It might not resonate with everybody, of course, and that's completely okay. It shouldn't. But it's going to create an even deeper bond with certain members of your audience. And that's exactly what you should aim for. Because remember, you don't need 1 million followers on your social channels. All you need is a loyal tribe of 1,000 true fans to make a solid full-time living. So, in case you don't know what a true fan is and what separates a true fan from another normal fan or a social media follower, please go back to our episode on that. We have an episode completely dedicated to the topic of creating a fan base of 1,000 true fans. So, this was the first aspect of great art that sells. Put your true heart and soul into your music because people will notice, because it enhances the emotional quality of what you're creating, and it creates a very deep bond with the most important people of your tribe of fans. Now, the second aspect of great art that sells is challenge the status quo. So, capitalism in general tends to reward conformist, common denominator music because it appeals to a large audience of potential consumers, of course. But there's always also a counter movement that disrupts certain genres from within. And if you're brave enough to challenge the status quo, there is a good chance you're going to attract a certain group of people who are curious, who are willing to join your mission and disrupt your genre. And this can come in the form of using new concepts of composition styles, new arrangement techniques, but it can also be just pioneering new technologies, for example, or merging different aspects of one genre with something from another genre, or one technology with another technology. And the counterintuitive result of challenging the status quo often comes in the form of commercial success. And it's a strange paradox, but we've seen it happen many, many times before. So just to recap, the first aspect was put your true heart and soul into your music. The second aspect was challenge the status quo by using, for example, new technologies, new styles, merging different things, new aspects of your genre, whatever. And the third aspect of great art that sells is provide context and orientation. And this one is really important. If your music resonates with people emotionally and you're growing your tribe of true fans, there is always a second layer to your art that might help you make a living. In times of information overload, people are craving for orientation in their lives. And so the context that surrounds your music, but also your artist personality, can provide that orientation that people are craving for. So how can you do that? First of all, the way you set up your artist brand already does a lot of the heavy lifting. Yes, shooting the right artist photo and writing a proper bio provides context, but it doesn't stop there. If you manage to add extra value to your true fans, for example by creating special editions of your latest release, you give them a reason to dig deeper and find even more of that orientation. So in essence, you have to go above and beyond for your true fans. Now let me give you an example. How does this sound? Imagine you've just finished a full-length album. And yes, I believe we're still seeing a comeback of albums in niche genres at least. But yeah, let's say you've finished your full-length album right now, and you've come up with a limited special edition that is focused on your die-hard fans. So this is how it's set up. It's a limited edition of 100 colored vinyl records. And even if you don't make a vinyl pressing for your whole release, maybe you still have like a little special edition. If it's a full-length album, I still think you should have some physical product available. So you have this limited edition of 100 colored vinyl records. They have a download code included of all digital formats. Yeah, that's quite normal, you think. But you also include the high-resolution 96 kHz 24-bit master files. And for some people that are quite audiophile, this might be a very, very interesting, special way of showing value. So this limited package also includes a 12-page booklet containing a background story about the album concept, as well as documentary-style photos of the production process. You also include a handwritten, personalized thank you letter to the buyer. You include album artwork poster as a limited hand-numbered screen print. And you also include a secret download link to the field recording samples that you have used for this record, including a license to use them for free in their own productions. So this is just a blueprint of this whole idea, but I hope you get it. It's about giving your true fans more than just the art itself, more than just the music, more than just the album that you've written. Your music would be enough, of course, but this over-delivery that provides context and orientation enhances the value you're giving them. And yes, you need to charge more for such a special edition, of course, but this doesn't have to be with you being greedy. You're simply offering much more value, so it's completely fine to charge a little bit more for that. So let's quickly recap the 3 aspects of art that sells. The first one was put your true heart and soul into your music. The second one was challenge the status quo. And the third one was provide context and orientation. If you manage to get these 3 aspects into the way you establish your artist career, then I think it's completely fine. You are creating great art that has a certain value and that it automatically is in some way, shape, or form commercially successful. There's nothing wrong with that, as long as you stay true to whatever you want to create. Now, let's discuss what happens when success kicks in, because that creates a whole different layer of problems. Let's assume you've done things right and you produced great music that resonates with people. Let's say you've grown quite a significant following of true fans, and you are commercially successful, at least to a degree that lets you make a solid living. The danger in this phase of your career is that more and more opportunities will pop up, and you will have to decide which of them you're willing to accept. So let me just give you a couple of examples. The first one is a famous vodka brand wants to use your music in their latest commercial. Okay. Second example, some famous fashion brand is organizing club nights in your area and invites you to play there. And third example, you're being offered a gear sponsorship by a famous instrument company. So at first, these offers might sound like great opportunities. And usually there's a lot of cash involved in deals with beverage or fashion companies. And speaking of the third example, who wouldn't say yes to a gear sponsorship, right? Let's take a closer look though. You might have overlooked something here. So the first, absolutely most important point I want to make here is you have to protect your brand and you have to serve your audience. The art versus capitalism discussion reveals some interesting problems. Let's illustrate them by thinking through the examples above. If you're letting a vodka brand use your music in a commercial, you have to keep the consequences in mind. In which context will they use it? What is the storyline of the commercial? Is this whole thing in line with your values and principles as an artist? Maybe you don't want them to seduce underage people to drinking. I don't know. I mean, this is something you have to decide personally if that's something you're cool with or not. And the same applies to the second example. That was playing shows for a fashion brand. Would these club nights be something your true fans would be interested in? Would they attend? How is the marketing done for it? Does it fit your artist brand? Are you allowed to play your typical type of set? Or are there any additional restrictions? And then coming to the third example, gear sponsorships. I mean, how can this possibly be a problem? Well, I think this only makes sense if you have an actual use for these tools that goes beyond just fiddling around with them and in front of a camera and finding it nice to have a gear sponsor. Are these critical pieces that help you shape your unique sonic fingerprint? Do they provide a major benefit for your workflow? Yeah, so these are questions you have to ask yourself before accepting a gear sponsorship. And by the way, the same applies to this podcast. So I've already received a couple of sponsorship requests and I said no to all of them because I just felt they weren't a good fit to what I'm trying to create here. And I also owe this to you as my audience to only accept sponsorships that are in line with what I try to get across here. And so the same thing applies to you and your audience. Make sure you only accept sponsorship requests that are really in line with what you're trying to achieve. That leads to the second important point I want to make here. Do choose corporations wisely. So I don't say that every sponsorship or brand corporation is an act of selling out or sacrificing your art to a big, bad capitalist system. Actually, I think there are good ways to cooperate and create a win-win situation. And here's how I would go about making these decisions. First of all, conduct proper research on the brand and make sure that it's in line with your principles as an artist. If you have a weird gut feeling, then it's a pretty clear sign that you should say no to this corporation. Just trust your gut feeling on this. And whatever they plan to do, you must be in charge of the creative aspect. As soon as a brand wants to change something about your artistic output, run as fast as you can. They either respect your art or they simply want to use your name. It's just one of the two. And lastly, make sure that the project or sponsorship gives something back to the scene. So if a brand simply wants to buy themselves into the scene, you should not support their cause. But if they truly get what it's all about and they respect the culture in every little detail, and they are willing to support the underground scene in a meaningful way, you might want to consider it. And believe me, back in my days as a brand strategist for a marketing agency, I have seen artist and brand corporations go really well, but also go really bad. But if you stick to the suggestions above, there's a good chance that you can co-create interesting projects and add value to your fans and also to the scene as a whole. And that being said, I also think it's completely fine to say no. To say that you simply don't want to participate in any sponsorship or brand collaboration whatsoever, because it offers you the most freedom as an artist. That's completely fine, I think. If that is part of your principles as an artist, stick to it. You might not need it, and your audience probably also doesn't need it. So it's completely fine to say no. It's also completely fine to say yes if you follow certain principles and you define for yourself what do you want to be part of and what not. So let's put this into action now. What can you do to escape this dilemma of art versus capitalism? I have collected 3 action steps that might help you here. The first one is Simply accept that art can't be treated like any other product. So even if you find many voices online and also offline that say your music is just like any other product, don't fall for this perspective, please. It is something different, and I'm convinced that we have, as artists, some kind of responsibility to treat our art differently and not to see it just as a product. If you have something important to express, be aware that your music has the potential to change people's lives for the better. So I have seen that with music myself. Music has definitely changed my life for the better. Some lyrics by artists that I listened to when I was 14 have impacted my life hugely until this day. And so I think it just deserves to have a different status than just the one of a product. Action step number 2, get as close as possible to your artistic vision and commit to it. So don't try to adapt your music to what the genre currently calls for. Instead, carve out your own unique little niche sound within the genre and dare to challenge the status quo. That is probably going to be the recipe that helps you, the recipe that is also the better way to, in the end, make that art commercially successful while still staying true to it. Find out how you can use interesting composition techniques, brave arrangement tweaks, and also groundbreaking new technology to your advantage. And be very, very careful with brand corporations and choose wisely. Make sure you remain artistic control over the project and try to find always ways to support the scene rather than exploit it. And action step number 3, think about ways to add massive value to your true fans again and again. So how can you provide context and orientation in an information overloaded, complex world? And can you come up with some creative ways to present or package your music so that your true fans perceive extra value? So that's it for this episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. Now, I would love to hear from you where you stand on this topic. You can either go to pickyourselfpodcast.com and leave a comment below every episode, or you can join our Facebook group, pickyourselfpodcast.com/community. We have a dedicated discussion thread for every single episode. I would love to see you there. I would also love you to check out the 7 strategies of highly successful electronic music artists that you can find on pickyourselfpodcast.com/free. And I hope to have you here again next week with another fresh episode. Until then, bye-bye, have a good one. If you don't want to miss any of the upcoming episodes, please make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app. And you can find detailed blog posts for every single episode on pickyourselfpodcast.com. Until then, see you next time.